Welcome back to Newsmaker. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Dawn Jones. Cyberbullying comes in many forms and can have devastating and tragic consequences. Just recently, 20-year-old Michelle Carter was sentenced to prison for pressuring her boyfriend to commit suicide via text messaging. AT&T recently launched a first-of-its-kind effort to help students, parents, and educators tackle the cyberbullying crisis. And joining us today here on Newsmaker to talk about this is Teresa Mask with AT&T and Napoleon Harrington, who is the president of the Michigan Mental Health Counselors Association. And thank you both for being here today to discuss this growing and very important problem in our society today.
Yeah, thank you.
And Napoleon, why don't we start with you? We know that bullying isn't anything new. It's been around since probably the beginning of time, but cyberbullying is a little different. So why don't you talk to us about the differences between, you know, your old school bully and the cyberbullying crisis that's permeating in our society now?
Yeah, well, bullying is any unwanted aggressive behavior that, in a sense, puts a kid at a power differential. It could be perceived that it's a poor power differential, and it's usually an issue of power and control. The difference between bullying and cyberbullying, for the most part, is cyberbullying is 24/7. We use mobile devices to access each other, and when kids are using mobile devices for cyberbullying, which is, of course, a negative purpose, it can reach their targets in a very short amount of time, and it not just reaches their target, it also reaches the people who are responding to the target. So it reaches a lot of people very quickly. It's 24/7, and because we have a paradox of progress with these mobile devices, we see it more often.
So where, you know, back in the day it may have been on the playground.
Yeah.
And once you leave the playground, it's pretty much over until you see them on the playground tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Now, you know, it's just easily accessible with our mobile devices.
Yeah, and it's a longer lasting effect. Images that are posted online, for the most part, I usually try to tell every kid and adult that once you post something online, it's usually there permanently. You may not be able to access it as quickly, but it's going to live there for quite some time. And that's another lasting impact of cyberbullying. Once it's put out into the world, it's out there, and so now we've got to deal with it.
And for the one being bullied, sometimes things you see you can't unsee.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you replay that image. You know, even if they remove it, you continue to replay that image over and over again.
Yeah, and the audience gets to replay it as well. Yeah. So it's just a dangerous trend.
Now, what are some of the signs that parents can look for to tell if their child is being bullied, or their child may unfortunately be the bully?
Yeah. To put that in a little bit of context, adolescence is a really tough time frame. So when I talk about some of these characteristics, I mean to say that this is a pattern that you start to notice. Emotionally, what you start to notice is that the kids start to stop using the computer. If you see a sudden change in their computer behavior or their mobile behavior, then that certainly is a sign. Also, when you see changes in eating or sleeping habits, they start to feel, you get the impression that they're feeling something that they're not used to. Unfortunately, it can get to the point where they become self-injurious. They might hurt themselves, or unfortunately even to the point of suicide. More recently, we've seen a rash of suicides that have happened with adolescents and early adulthood because of some of the cyberbullying situations that have been experienced. So that's emotionally. Academically, you'll see that a kid may not have the highest interest that they used to have in school. Grades will drop. Sometimes they skip school, as well as start to get into trouble at school, more fights, etc.
So it's really behavior changes.
A lot of behavior changes, and a pattern of them, especially when they deviate from the norm.
And I mean, can parents mistake this as just depression?
Yeah.
Is it a fine line with, trying to decide, is it just, some adolescent depression that's coming on, or is something really, more major than that happening?
Knowing your teen is really important in that regard. So if you notice that it's a change from how they normally are, then you want to kind of raise your antennas to say that there could be a problem. But if this is just, you'll know the difference between if it's just adolescence and if there's really a cyberbullying attack. The biggest factor is change in behavior with mobile device and with computer.
And what's interesting now is the targets of bullying really expanded and opened up a lot since for cyberbullying as opposed to just traditional bullying. So who's mostly targeted to become bullies these days?
That's a good question. It's kind of open to say that anyone is fair game for targeting for bullying. I've had conversations with kids who have come to the practice and they've been targets for bullying, and they would be the seeming normal kid, and I know normal is relative, but they would seem to be the normal kid who just simply is dealing with the normal adolescent issues. But because you can capture moments on devices, unfortunately devices sometimes capture the worst moments in people's lives, and it can actually send a trajectory of information out terribly when there's bad things that happen. So anybody could really be a target. So I don't want people to think that they can't be a target. Yeah.
And Teresa, we're going to get you in on this discussion. AT&T feels strongly about preventing cyberbullying. Tell us why the company, this is one of the causes it's taken up.
Sure. Well, as was mentioned, cyberbullying happens from our tablets and from our smartphones. So it's a technology issue. You know, we want people to use their devices for good. We want them to be responsible digital citizens. You know, we understand how pervasive and how alarming cyberbullying is. We did our own study and we found in New York 80% of students knew someone who had been bullied. 50% had been bullied themselves, yet only a third of them said they had told an adult. So AT&T wants to start a conversation. We want to help parents and educators, many of whom didn't grow up with social media. So while they may have been bullied as children, it's completely different, as we talked about.
It's a different ball game today.
They struggle with how to address it. They struggle with understanding the signs. And so we're providing resources for parents and a guide to help them start the conversation and address the issue.
And there's a film that AT&T is releasing. Before we look at the trailer for this film, just tell us a little bit about it.
Yep, we're very proud of it. It's a 20-minute film called There's a Soul Behind That Screen, and it delves into the effects of cyberbullying, and it's told from the perspective of real-life teens. We did a contest, and these were the winning entries. And so we hear from parents, and we hear from teens, and we hear from bullies themselves about why they do it. And so it's very powerful. Everyone should watch it.
And as I mentioned, we do have a 30-second trailer of that film, so we're going to pause for a moment to take a look at that trailer.
Social media can be a powerful tool. I also believe that it could be a negative thing.
It's behind a computer screen and people get brave when that happens, so they feel like they can say whatever they want.
She took a screenshot of me and sent it to a bunch of people at my school.
This girl was posting anonymous comments on my pictures saying how I was ugly and bad, and she always had a nasty comment to say.
Kind of powerful images there and messages there. And Napoleon, why don't you tell us why campaigns like this are so important to fight against cyberbullying? It's like the mental health community and the technology community coming together.
Yeah, I absolutely love the campaign. I'm excited about it because it helps to raise the awareness of the magnitude of the problem. We've heard traces about how cyberbullying is an issue, but this completely raises the awareness about the issue to the problem. So kudos for the campaign. Also, it helps us to kind of take some sensitive looks into what kind of solutions we can come together with and resolve the problem. The impact that the campaign can make is tremendous, and the mental health community is very excited about making sure that cyberbullying is reduced, and in a sense, kind of wrapping our arms around the people who may be affected and encouraging bullies to become more productive citizens related to using technology. You got it, absolutely. Yes.
And Teresa, will this be in wide distribution? How will people be able to access this?
Yes, the film is actually on YouTube, and you can also see it at There's a Soul Behind That Screen.org. What's great is that there's a 12-page document that comes along with it. This is the guide that helps parents and adults deal with it. Talks about how to prevent, how to handle, and how to detect cyberbullying, and so it's very useful. I also like the fact that it doesn't just address the victim. There's tips on how to deal with a bully as well.
And we'll get more into that coming up in our next segment, but now we're going to take a break and we're going to continue our conversation with Teresa and Napoleon in just moments. We'll be right back.